Tonight, we're joined by Anthony Diemeri, a filmmaker who spent the last decade threading an unusual needle between comedy, politics, and independent cinema. You might know his work from Zoran Mamdani's historic mayoral campaign, where his videos didn't just go viral, they helped to define a new kind of political media for New York City. Or maybe you caught Subway Takes, the cultural phenomenon he shoots and directs. But Anthony's story starts way before any of that. Back in 2013, when his web series Bros went viral and had Lionsgate calling. Since then, he's built a career on a simple but radical premise: that authentic human moments captured on camera, whether in political campaigns or independent films, matter more. He's the co-founder of Melted Solids, a creative agency that's helped elect numerous progressive candidates. He's behind the camera on some of the internet's most beloved content. And this year, he released his directorial debut, Love New York, which we just caught a glimpse of, which just won Best Feature at the Bowery Film Festival. And next year, he'll be releasing the horror comedy, Romance Never Dies, all while juggling what he calls an uncut gems-like lifestyle of creative risk-taking. What makes Anthony's work distinctive isn't just the virality, it's the way he understands that politics, comedy, and cinema are all asking the same question: how do you capture the truth about people? So please, everyone, let's welcome Anthony Diemeri.
This is an interesting room to be in. So this is where I used to come and be a broke
delinquent
screenwriter. Yeah, this is
a delinquent bro.
I remember like right around where this table is, I was doing index cards for a horror film script, and like a broy brunch party started like right around me, and I was waiting for somebody, and I was like, I'm not giving up this seat.
Yes.
And people were like raging in front of us while I was stubbornly doing like screenwriting duties.
I'd love to just start at the very beginning and kind of, really understand how you fell into film in the first place. I know you started making films in second grade with your mom's camcorder, and not just playing with the camcorder, but actually making films, which I thought was really fascinating when reading more about you. What was driving that impulse so early? How did you even discover film and start playing with her camcorder to make films?
All right. Well, I come from a very, let's just say, theatrical, to be nice, Italian-American family. And my first discovery of like film as like a thing or something could be a part of was my uncle Joe was cast by Robert De Niro as murdered man in A Bronx Tale in like 1992 or something like this. And I remember for like our entire extended family, it was a very big deal. And I didn't really understand. Like, it was just like hearing Robert De Niro, like this was like the pinnacle of the Italian-American dream to like do this thing. So that happened simultaneously through other theatrical parts of my family. I had my cousin Michael used to grab us as kids at like Easter or Christmas and be like, we're gonna put on a play for the adults. And so he would like cast us and we would do this thing. So I think it planted something in my head. Later in my life, when I moved to LA, I lived on Michael's couch. He's still an actor and like we still have a relationship. It's crazy, it's like 30 something years on. But yeah, I picked up my mom's camcorder one day, like thinking to do what my cousin Michael was doing. Like, let's have my brother, my cousins, let's do this little play in front of the camera. And it was just the most fun I ever had. Like and there was like sort of writing little storylines and things like that and giving, I remember we went upstairs and watched the tape and then ran back downstairs and made a sequel.
What are the storylines that come across the mind of a second grader at that time?
We had got really into an episode of Family Matters that was parodying Bruce Lee. And we were just like, let's go do that.
That's awesome.
So we're just like, yeah, just, a karate movie, nice. A kung fu movie of some sort. And then later, I think I decided to take it seriously when I was like 12. And I was like, I'm gonna write a zombie movie.
I love that that's serious.
Yeah. It was a lot more serious. So that was like, and then then we're filming with like paintball guns as props. And we filmed a movie when I was like 14 that's just called Ninja Movie. And yeah, it was like us dressing up and having plastic swords and like running around the woods. But there was something, I think, like the adults who were watching this stuff were like, you guys are, this is good. Like we were like mimicking camera moves and things we had seen and doing something that was a little bit more elaborate. Yeah, and then I got rejected from film school, basically. I went through high school, tried to go to NYU Film, like literally made an all-in, uncut gem style, made an all-in bet, only applied to one school out of college. No safety school, just like, if it's not this, I'll figure it out. And yeah, got rejected from NYU. Eventually I got to Fordham after getting rejected from NYU a second time. And I was like, okay, I'm not supposed to do film. Like they don't want me. And I got really into politics because I became an anti-Iraq war activist as a student and got really into a certain off the mainstream breed of political consciousness. I had an uncle in the Bronx who would like hand me like Malcolm X speeches on a cassette tape and be like, you should listen to this. You
Nice.
know? So
Cool uncle.
cool. I had a cool uncle, gave me a lot of radical books to read, consciousness expanding literature. Also big on meditation. If you ever meet him, he'll talk.
Malcolm X and meditation.
Malcolm X.
What a pair.
Yeah. And vegetarianism, which is, I like, you know, I spent a lot of time, I'm still vegetarian. But that happened. Yeah. So I thought I was going to leave film and just be a history professor at some point.
Yeah, I saw that you were looking into political science as a major.
Yeah, I thought I was just done with it. And then I got an internship at Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And that's where, then I got back into film through doing news. So I started to learn Final Cut Pro and I started to do videography, and like the assignments would be like, go to Riverside Church and film Noam Chomsky. And I'm like 20 years old doing this. So it was a really bizarre rooms I was getting thrown into.
Malcolm X, meditation, vegetarianism, and Noam Chomsky. This is the little mix of radicalizing Anthony.
Yeah, it's conscious expanding experience.
Yeah,
you know? Like, thinking big. That happens. I spend a lot of time in activism, you know, filming protests, filming this, and then I didn't get hired out of school. I wanted to work in news and like go all the way in. I didn't get, you know, they weren't hiring, so I found a job in advertising, which was the complete opposite lifestyle on all fronts. So then I worked in commercial advertising. You start to realize there's a lot of people that come from art school and come from film school. And so I was meeting these people that came out of NYU, and like none of us wanted to be there. It was just like, I thought I'd work in film, this and that, you know. And then sorry if anybody is this person. I know when we would meet someone who really wanted to be there. Like there was somebody who worked on Zyrtec, which is an allergy drug. Sorry if this is, but he was,
I'm a Zyrtec guy.
He was so excited about Zyrtec, and he would be like, guys, client said we could do whatever we want today. Like it was like this bizarre world. And so there was this crew of us. One of them is a filmmaker who just finished his first film shooting in my apartment 2 weeks ago. His name is Jason Musanti Klein. When I met him, I was 21, he was 26. I learned like he was the top filmmaker out of his class at NYU. He went to school with Aubrey, like in his student short films, like Aubrey Plaza and all these like familiar faces that are kind of mind blowing. And it was like, okay, this is somebody I can learn from, I really like hovered around him for years. Eventually we were roommates, but I learned so much from him. I learned directing from him. I learned, like he put me in my first screenwriting class. I did auditions for the first time where like I was the reader, bringing actors in and reading with them. So I just was sort of like his apprentice sort of for a few years. And he had this dedicated film crew and everybody, and this little cult around him as a 26-year-old because he won this big prize, which was R.I.P. Kevin Spacey. But it was, Kevin Spacey used to have a short film contest when you win $50,000. And so like Jason had like this novelty check, and it was just like, wow, this is a world I want to be in. So I started working with him.
And you were still at the advertising firm at this point?
Yeah, still in advertising. I eventually
that was your 9 to 5. You're doing the films on the stuff on the side.
Eventually, I went from my first job, which was a now defunct agency, J. Walter Thompson, to Digitas, and like basically, and it was a miracle, not a promotion, but a move on up. I think I basically like doubled my salary and then had half the work to do. Like that's exponentially a move up. So yeah, so then I had a lot of free time, and I was getting very antsy about working in advertising, and I was writing scripts more on the outside. I wanted to do something. Something clicked when I saw HBO Girls. And I think that happened for a lot of millennials who were filmmaking.
This is like 2012?
2012, very year that Gen Z is very nostalgic for right now. We all lived through it, guys. That was the peak. Just catching up.
HBO Girls.
Yeah, I tuned into it. Somebody was like, you remind me of a character in the show. It was, unfortunately, Charlie when he was not dateable. But this is a true story. And then I was like, who am I in this show? And then I was like, oh, okay. But I watched it, and then like something clicked. I was like, this is somebody is going to parody this. I lived in the Lower East Side at the time. I used to go to Webster Hall every weekend. I spent a lot of time at like bro-y bottle service clubs, whatever, 2012 life, 2011 life, Pasha, all that stuff. And I was like, being in that world of just like 23-year-olds, like, we're getting bottle service tonight, which maybe some of you remember that. But I was like, this world is ripe for parody. I want to write about this world of like New York nightclub life, this like self-perceived young elite, like mostly like you work at a bank or you work in finance, and so I wrote a show. It was called Bros, and originally I pitched it to Jason. I was like, Jason, you should do this. I'll be your, I'll help you do this. And he kind of just like had it on the back burner for like 4 or 5 months. And then it was around this time of year. So like this time of year, 2012, I was like, okay, I have to do this. I need to get out of I can't be in advertising forever. I need to do something. And I thought it was just going to be a project that I did and like showed at a bar with some friends, and would just be like this minor stepping stone. And then it went like crazy viral. Like we first did a parody trailer of HBO Girls that came out. That week, I got a phone call from someone who is, I guess, a TV producer, and he's like, so I heard it's about $500,000 to make a pilot, and I made this trailer and episode for $3,000. And so he's like, I heard, is it about $500,000 to make, your first episode? I just remember just like, play it cool. It's like, we might be able to do more than one episode with that budget. And so April 1st, we put out our first episode. And that's when my life like really dramatically changed, because we put it out on a Monday. That Friday, like I got emails from TV executives, and they were just like, we can see your project on TV. Like, so suddenly I was 25 years old, and it was like, okay, I thought I was going to do this as a hobby. And then when I was in my 30s, I would attempt something serious. And like, it was the first project. And as things happen, I couldn't handle it. Like, I think I like panicked. I got bad advice. I had this mentor figure who I was working for, was a journalist who claimed to have all these Hollywood contacts and know better than everybody. And he was like, you don't need them. You don't need, this really happened. He's like, you don't need Lionsgate. Who the hell's Lionsgate?
And so Lionsgate was who was emailing you?
Lionsgate was emailing. There were other people too. Eventually, like, I quit the day job, but the journalist I worked for gave me a $10,000 advance to go to Kazakhstan with him for 10 days. This all happened in this happened in 2 weeks. It was like the video, and I'm 25. The video came out. The Hollywood people are trying to get, calling me. I remember we had like his wife's dinner, like maybe 2 days after those phone calls. I talked about it at dinner, and he's like, how much money do you need to quit your job? I was like, I don't know, like $10,000. He's like, come. He's like, come
That's
over.
it?
I mean, in retrospect, he's like, come over tomorrow, I'll write you a check. And then real big shot moves happening at this birthday dinner. And so I quit my advertising job, went with him to Kazakhstan, came back. I went to Kazakhstan for 10 days, came back, and I spent the $10,000 making episode 2. And I'm literally coasting, and I'm just walking around telling people, like, if you build it, they will come. Like, that's all we need to do is build it. Leading up into doing Bros, I was doing nightlife videography and filming at like Webster Hall and things like that, filming at music festivals. And I remember like meeting Jason on the arm. He was like a rock star to me. And I was like, hey man, like, can I apprentice you sometime? Or like, I'll be your PA. Like, I just like really like your work. And when it came time to do the first episode of Bros, I knew he was the only person who had a red 1 camera at the time. Or red Scarlet camera. And I remember asking just him to borrow it. I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this thing. And he's like, cool. he's such a man of few words, like, I've never done narrative. Let's try it out. And so he just let me borrow all his camera gear. And that's why it looked so much better. And then our another friend who was also 25 years old, who's now like Taika Waititi's like go-to cinematographer, is an incredible guy, Mike Berlucci. And we were just 25-year-olds who wanted to do like hobby film. So Mike was the DP, Jason brought the gear and was the camera op. And now Jason is shadowing Mike and like learning this more formal way. We're all learning from each other in this process. And so we did this thing completely independently for a year. And I was self-funding, eventually ran out of money and then run out of steam. And yeah, so then 2014 was like this big crash, I think, like where all the momentum just got lost. I had taken my boss's advice and I literally just ghosted on Lionsgate television as a 25-year-old.
But what happened? You're in the middle of filming?
No, like it was between, they were like, let's have a meeting. You know, they were pitching me budgets. They were like, it was really gonna happen.
What caused you to walk away?
They started to use more businessy language that I thought was like really intense. There was an entertainment lawyer who was also advising me. We all were delusional. It was like, we thought so many more opportunities would come. This project's gonna go to TV. Lionsgate will be one among many, and other opportunities will happen. And I think we kind of blew it, or at least should have and then also like Hollywood managers were calling me. People like, some guy called me and he said, I didn't call him back because it was a little too slimy, but he was like, Anthony, you and me, we're gonna make boatloads of money, boatloads. Like,
what's the lesson, like looking back, like if you had, what's the sliding doors moment? Is there something you would have done differently?
I had such a rebelliousness to doing things in any sort of a structure, I think at the time, where I didn't see that there was a way to like participate in, and later in life, I would like read books and learn. So I'm like, oh, David Lynch directs pasta commercials, like to pay the bills, you know, like this isn't so far, like it's not like that there's an art life that's like way over here and there's a commercial life that's like complete, like they're not as antithetical as I thought.
Yeah, I love that, the David Lynch story. I mean, Philip Glass, the famous composer, was also a taxi driver and a plumber for decades of his life to pay the bills. So, you know, it's interesting, you know, you walk away in 2014, you know, things go down the tube, but at the same time, I think what's one thing that kind of came from all of this is you had met, or rather, someone reached out to you because they had seen Bros in 2014, Kareem Rama, your partner
Yes.
from Subway Takes,
Yeah.
who apparently had emailed you out of the blue because he liked your work and asked to grab a beer. And that sort of became the impetus for what is now decade-plus long collaboration and friendship? Like, how did that come about?
Kareem, I met, he had a culture blog, like a deep cut. I'm following the, trend, like this stuff is just paying attention to internet culture, to, just creative things that were happening. It was called Extracurriculars. And it was like, I think a thing he would do on top of his day job. And he worked at, I think at the same he worked at Vice or he worked at the New York Times. So yeah, there were relationships and actors, people I worked with that I still work with, people that are, in this film that came out of this period, and we've maintained a relationship for a dozen years. But yeah, Kareem reached out and he was like, I like what you're doing. Let's get a beer. And yeah, we began like our 12-year-long collaboration. He started a media company. That was one of the last projects I worked on before I moved to California, was helping Kareem do his Kickstarter video for his media company, which was a internet content-based company. And he hosted Bros. That was the other thing. He was like a big champion of Bros. Later, his first acting role is, later we bring Bros back for season 2 in 2016. And it's his first narrative acting role, was being in that. And he did such a good job that we wrote him into another script. So he came back twice in season 2 of that project, 2016, 2017. Yeah, so I mean, in between this, I moved to LA. I had moving to LA at the time I did was the best possible thing that could have happened. Because summer 2014, it was like and granted, I got cocky. I was like, I've left advertising. Sayonara, guys, I'm going to TV. That did not happen. So I basically burned every bridge with all these agencies I worked for. I wasn't getting any freelance work. I was paycheck to pay. I was doing like the oddest job. I was doing copywriting for a rave promoter that would just have events that were just called things like Surreal. And I remember I was like writing my job was like to write the email invites, or and this is very like 2013 like burner culture, right? So I remember I was like, I need to like really embody this. So I read the Surrealist Manifesto, and I decided to not sleep for multiple days so that my brain would be a little looser before I wrote his email copy. Like it's like I was doing very weird jobs. And people would keep checking on me, and they were like, "How's that project going?" Like, huh? And I was like, "Yeah, it's still happening, yeah." And like inside, I'm dying. Eventually, I got bedbugs, and then it was like I was exiled. Like it was like And so my cousin that I did plays with when I was a kid, he's like, "Come to LA. I live out here. I have a couch." He got on a reality show and won $50,000 in like. Kind of like a Real World's Road Rules type reality show. And he was living this like Hollywood life, coming out of like being a winner of a Survivor-esque show. And he's like living some bizarre life, and I like just jumped into it. So yeah, like the bedbugs thing, I was like, okay, I could either renew my lease or take my last $4,000 and gamble in LA, and just see what happens. So I went, I lived on his couch. Within a week, I had a job, a car, and an apartment. And I was like, okay, I should be here. This is where, this is where I'm
adulting.
Like these are things that came to me very randomly. Like someone just through the grapevine was like, hey, I heard you're here. I have a producer coming from New Zealand. Do you want to go film street musicians? And I'm like, sure, yeah. And so I just, my cousin Michael had a friend named Sal who worked at the car dealership. Got me the best deal possible. Zero down. Zero down. He's like, I'm not going to look at your credit. It's like, okay.
Nice.
So, yeah. And then my friend who's now in this film, an actress friend who I did my first sketch comedy thing with in 2010, Melanie Chandra, she got on an HBO show, and suddenly her career was like skyrocketing. And she lived in this artist share house in West Hollywood. And she's like, do you want to just sublet my place? I don't know if I'm ever coming back. And so I got this I was in like the last remaining, like there was like an old mattress in the driveway. Like this place is falling apart right next to like the most beautiful homes in Melrose. It was like the last remaining artist share house. And I think we had like 4 or 5 roommates upstairs, 4 or 5 roommates downstairs. My rent was at one point $700, which was awesome. And so I would come back to New York as much as I could during the years when I was in LA. So 2014, 2018, my residence is in LA. And I would come there and I would literally just like park here. I would just hang out. I would come to New York. I missed New York so much. I would find any excuse to be here. And
what brought you back to New York?
the peak of living in LA was this journalist boss I worked for bought a house there that we called the Mansion. And it was like a house in the hills. And when he first bought the house, he had like a 5-month wait to move in. And him and his wife were like, we need you to live in the house. And so I go from like Bedbugs in New York to like the Mansion in the Hollywood Hills in 9 months. And so I just lived in this house for a while. And then some friends of mine, Jason Klein, also moved out to LA. He reached out to me and he's like, hey, crazy thing is happening. I'm producing Tommy Wiseau's next music video. Have you guys seen The Room?
Or The Disaster Artist?
Or The Disaster Artist.
No.
So I'm living in this house. They're like, we need a location for the music video. I was like, well, I'm living in this mansion alone. Do you guys want to shoot the video here? And suddenly, this is where LA like peaks. This is like not even a year in. I'm like living in this house. Tommy Wiseau comes to the house to rehearse. And he's just yelling at this. It was crazy. It was really crazy. They had cast this model who didn't really speak English. She was Eastern European, that she didn't have dialogue. That was the plan. And in the rehearsal, he's just screaming at her. He's like, acting 101. No, he is your boyfriend. No, this, what? And he's just like he's chewing her out. He's giving her the hardest time. And we're just watching this whole thing like, what are we living through? Tommy's at her house. And the next day, he replaced her. So then he's like, yeah, it was so bizarre. He's like, I need someone else. He shows up to set 4 hours late. So Jason started like directing the music video while he was gone. We filmed a Tommy Wiseau music video in the house. And then for some months after, I was just in Tommy Wiseau's world. And like, we hung out with him. I have pictures of my friend's like birthday party where Tommy Wiseau cut the cake with a samurai sword. I don't know why any of this was happening. This is like 2015. And yeah, it was a crazy time. But because of that, I started paying attention to they announced that The Disaster Artist was coming out. I started following James Franco a little bit more than I would have. He announced he was doing a film class in New York in 2016, a master class. Nothing, I kind of hit a lull in LA and I was like, you know what, let me just give this a shot. And I got into this class that meant I would have had to move back to New York for a summer of 2016. And so did a good friend of mine who's also in the film. In the first scene of this film, Raleigh Kane, I met her in Los Feliz, just walking around LA. She's jogging and she's like, what are you doing today? I said, I don't know, I gotta go home and apply to this class. And before I got home, she had already applied. So she moved to New York with me when we had met through Upright Citizens Brigade doing improv class in LA. So she and I both moved to New York. I was her only friend in New York, and I was like, this is my home. Let's go hang out. We spent a lot of time in this room, and so I came back. I took I had this bizarre summer with James Franco. You could read about this class. I'm not going to reveal. There's a sad downfall. You can Google it. But that gets me back in New York. During that time, I kickstarted season 2. Kareem was one of the first people to send me $500, so we kept filming Bros. We did Bros again, 2016, 2017. We had a political satire episode about the 2016 election. And the reason I did season 2 was because Donald Trump got the nomination. I was like, okay, I had this like satirical thing that would have worked perfectly in this world, and like I need to bring it back in some way. And so we did this whole episode Lila did a great remix. Lila's an amazing music supervisor. She remixed this improvised chant the actors were doing in the episode that was like our opening credit song, and we were like riding so high. We're like, we're back. It's happening. We put it online the day before the election. It's going viral. Trump is, mind you, the punchline of every joke in the episode. And we're like, surely we got to get these jokes out before it's too late, before we can't make these jokes anymore. It's going viral for a day, and then the election happens, and no one looked at that video for a year.
Oh,
no one wanted. It was the most painful thing to watch for years. So I all had other scripts too. I had to like throw them out and rewrite the whole thing. So then we kept this project going until 2018, and then we showed it in the same theater we were at last week in East Village. Again, somehow the algorithm changed. It did not go viral this time. I think only to this day, like 500 people have seen. Like we spent 2 years on this project and like no one saw it. But Kareem saw it, and he acted in 2 episodes, and he reached out to me, and we met here, and he's like, I have this idea for a short film. It's about a guy who really wants to be famous on the internet, but he can't do it himself, so he adopts. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. A retarded dog. Sorry, that's how he pitched it. That's how he pitched it. That was the plot of this movie. We wrote it, and then we started writing a short film based on this premise about this guy. There was this whole world of animal influencers, and maybe it still exists, but this is now like 2017, 2018. People have a dog, they get invited to the red carpet.
How do you assess the mental acuity of a dog?
You had to have like a dog that looked sad.
Yeah. Okay.
You've probably seen these dogs if you're on. There was like this whole culture, and like the owners of these dogs got to live like a celebrity's life, because they'd be like, that dog's at the premiere, that dog's on the red carpet, that dog's getting paid brand partnerships, influencer dogs. So we spent all of 2019 writing a movie about animal influencers that's called To Be Frank, and we wrote it so that we would make it. And then we had so much fun writing it that we wrote it beyond what we had the means. Suddenly it's like, okay, we don't have a few $100,000, so what are we gonna do now? So that got pushed to the side, and we started doing lots of like small sketch comedy pieces into the pandemic. And yeah, and around this time overlapping, it was the end of 2018. This is when political media starts. Sorry, guys. Long-winded way to get to where we're going here. But City Councilman Rafael Espinel, who used to be like the Bushwick city councilman, he was the young guy. He had very green politics. He legalized dancing, which was a thing. I don't know if you guys know about the Cabaret license. So Rafael, House of Yes did a big partnership, and there was this whole movement because people would use the cabaret law against.
I didn't know dancing was illegal.
It was illegal. You couldn't have more than 3 people dancing in your club if you didn't have a cabaret license. Technically, it was like jaywalking. But the police would enforce this law against like black clubs, gay clubs. It was like, using any excuse to like crack down on nightclubs and things like that. So yeah, this was like a world I got clued into through Raphael. But he had seen, I had met him at a Bernie event in like 2016. So he had seen this whole production, like all of our behind the scenes that we were posting in the Making of Bros for a few years now. And he reached out and he was just like, hey, so I'm gonna run for citywide office. I'm gonna run for public advocate. I don't know how to make videos. You know how to make videos. Can we make a campaign video? And so I called Lila and the core team of Bros, this like little ragtag indie film group. And we're like, guys, we're gonna make campaign ads now. Like, we're gonna do this. And Debbie Saslow, who I don't know, she's probably not here. But Debbie was the most involved right away. Like, her and I had been out political volunteering. We knocked on doors for Julia Salazar, who represents this district. We were very inspired by AOC's video. When AOC ran, she had this viral video. Maybe some of you have seen it, but it was sort of like revolutionary what political media can be. It was less polished. It felt more authentic and real. And it was really about her as an outsider. And it turned out the team that made that were people that worked in advertising, and they were based in Detroit. And we were just talking amongst ourselves, like there's no media company like that in New York. And so we got together. We did Raphael's campaign. Through that, actually it was through AOC's photographer recommended us to do our first congressional race, which was Jamal Bowman in Westchester. So in the North Bronx. So that was one of our second races. And then Debbie had met somebody in Queens as a political volunteer. She used to do canvassing shifts every weekend, and she was like, yeah, there's this really cool guy who's the canvassing lead. He's gonna run for office in Astoria. And she just keeps talking about these Queens friends, these volunteer friends. And yeah, so Zoran's first race in Astoria in 2020, Debbie joined as just like, I'm gonna volunteer, I'm gonna help this guy, he's my friend. So she was helping him manage his YouTube channel, in COVID, like when things had to go digital, she was assisting with some of that stuff. And then when things died down by, say, like after the peak of it, was it April, May, and leading into the primary that year, he was like, I want to make a video. So Debbie brought me in, and that's when I met Zoran. And we did 4 videos on his first campaign. And it was, we were like, there was such a rhythm to the way he works, and he, honestly, just so giving. The campaign office in Astoria, Queens, at the peak of the pandemic, just made itself like a neighborhood institution. If you were hungry, you can go there and get a meal. So like people would donate food, they would make sandwiches, they would make meals, and you can go pick up a meal. And that was just what they did. They used the office as this mutual aid, community support thing.
And this was like the prototype, or maybe the prelude to the Mayoral campaign that you guys worked on together.
That came later. So we kind of did more of like, almost like an AOC-style video for his first campaign and stuff. And there was a little hints of things we'd do, but 2 years after that, when he was elected, he had the idea of using video for a legislative campaign, which was called fixthemta.org. And that was how they raised the fare on the MTA a quarter every year or something. Zoran had this idea that like, let's fight it. Like let's freeze the fare, and let's make buses free. I mean, there was a whole logic to this, because buses were free during the pandemic. So that the state of New York had already found a way to fund the buses. They had already distributed their budget in a certain way. And then they started charging people again. And so they were just kind of reverse engineering how they did it in emergency mode. And so, this whole philosophy, like, well, we could just make buses a public utility. So we did this campaign called Fix the MTA, which was a lot looser, I think, a lot sillier than our videos in 2020. Where like, I was saying, like on our first day of shooting, so this is about 3 years ago this week, we were filming, and then we like got some halal truck guy on the street to like participate in the video. And there were all these drunk Santas walking by us. And like, we didn't plan to shoot during SantaCon, but it just happened to shoot the first video during so it was like our first day of shooting this campaign. We'd finished the script, and like we're like coasting on adrenaline. And like, I think Zoran and I were just having too much fun. We're like, we gotta go talk to these Santas. We gotta, come on. Like we gotta, let's just do some like man on the street style stuff. So we spent like an hour talking to drunk Santas. One line made the video, but like, there's clearly like this looseness and fun we were having, I think, and we were having like legitimate conversations.
They're a big part of the constituency.
Listen, SantaCon Santas, surprisingly progressive.
Who would have thought?
They were extremely articulate. They knew fiscal policy. They were like, they're like, I agree. And then of course, like one girl grabs somebody, she's like, fuck those fares. And I think that's the line in the video or whatever it is. But there was a lot of like, it was almost like had we had the bandwidth of the mayoral race, we probably would have just like spun out a spin-off video that was like just like Santa's on the MTA, Santa's on MTA policy.
I mean, you're working with Zoran like pre-mayoral race through your agency, but at the same time you're still working with Kareem on a bunch of shorts. You guys decided not to make To Be Frank, but it sounded like a lot of what you were doing instead around that time led to the creation of a bunch of different short form videos, including subway takes. How did that come about, and how did that intersect with with Zoran being one of the first guests?
There was 3 or 4 of us that were doing a lot of sketch comedy pieces in like 2019, 2020, 2021. We got nominated for a Webby Award for a bizarre thing where Kareem and I are screaming at each other in a cardboard boat. You could find it. It's called American Refugees. But we were doing these like bizarre sketches. We had our other friend Willem participating, and he's also a director and a filmmaker. We were working as a trio for a while, and Kareem decided at one point, he had done Keep the Meter Running with like a different team, and then at one point decided that he was gonna, like almost the same way, like a season 1, season 2, he's like, I'm gonna bring Keep the Meter Running back, and I'm gonna self-produce it. It just came to us and he's like, will you guys just come do this? Like, we had such a rapport through all the sketch comedy stuff, and so we, just started interviewing cab drivers and driving around doing that, and then developed we did this for like 2 months. This is in early 2023. And midway through doing that, Kareem had on the side this podcast development company for a while. And they were they were like at their last breath, I'd say. I'll let him tell that story, but they were hurting, and he's like, look, this whole thing might go under. We got one more idea. Let's give it a shot. He's like, I want to do a 1-minute podcast on the subway. And so we would just called a bunch of comedian friends and I'm technically the first subway take, because which is me telling him how much I hate vertical video, which was an argument. It's actually the most angry I've ever seen him get at a guest. And it's because we had been having this argument for years going into it. So it's basically just the camera picking us up. But we argued about vertical versus horizontal format of videos for years, for 2019. He was while we were writing To Be Frank, he was studying the game. He was on TikTok very early. He's like, I don't know what this is, but I'm into it, And so he was definitely tuned into a world of vertical video production that my cinephile self would not allow. It was just and continues to this day that we have this divide. But yeah, that's how Subway Takes happened. It just was it came out of this momentum of us working together, and he's just well, I have this one idea. I'll pay you guys to make the first couple episodes. We'll see where it goes. And then it literally went viral right away. And that's the other thing. People just loved it. And I think one of the early celebrity guests, just because Kareem and her had met before, they were following each other, but Olivia Wilde was the first big fan. She was just this is my favorite show. And and then, it's been crazy. What
are some of the your favorite behind the scenes stories or guests from Subway Takes?
We just went to Berlin with it in August, and the one person I recommended was this account. This is very Nightlife, you're a freak if you follow this guy. It's called Berlin Club Memes. Highly recommend it. And if you've ever been to Berlin, it'll make more sense. But he wore a balaclava mask and was just deadpan, and was I don't know if you've seen this episode, but it's just everybody should party for 72 hours. Yeah, I think I like the more freakish episode. The one recently was amazing. It really brought us back to the format, talking about dinosaurs. That was the take. We should talk about dinosaurs more. And now I think the way it's become an institution of New York is way more people chime in. People just throw themselves into the conversation now. But yeah, so while we were filming Fix the MTA, it overlapped with, I think, the first shoot of Subway Takes. And Debbie was watching my episode the rough cut before it went live, and Zoran was like watching over her shoulder, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool." Like he's like, "What is this?" You know. So he was tuned in pre-day one to Subway Takes, and I think similarly to Kareem, he is like he's a student of it. You know, he pays attention to media. I think he saw things like Escape the Meter, and he saw things like Subway Takes. I think post-pandemic, you can't walk through Washington Square Park without like a TikToker approaching you and like, what gives you confidence? What's your rent? You know, like you just, I feel like I'm gonna run out of like, what is the quick one question prompt? We've like done them all. What's your favorite sock to wear on a Wednesday? No, but yeah, so we were, you know, just doing like participating in this now creator economy. And yeah, Zoran like texted me at some point in, I don't know, like May, June 2024. And he's like, hey, like, I'd love to come on Subway Take sometime. Like, can we set this up? I'm like, yeah, sure. And at this point, we are normal people. He is my friend who has a job in public service. Like, that's the relationship. I'm like,
did you have any inkling he was gonna run?
no idea at this time. No idea what he wanted to come on and talk about, but people just, you know, it had enough of a momentum at the time because it had been around for about a year and a half, I guess, almost. So, you know, people were paying attention to it. There had been a few celebrities that came through and things like that. So it wasn't shocking that he would want to come on, but I had no idea what he was going to talk about. And then, you know, he came on and he said, Eric Adams is the worst mayor of all time. And like, and really went to town on our boy. It's just like,
not that hot of a take, but
yeah, really. And like went into like, I think he even went into the food vendor halal cart price thing, like in the Subway, like in that interview. And like clearly had this affordability, like something was up, something was going on. So it's like, we're like work friends. You know, we don't hang out all the time. We see each other out. We're friendly. We've known each other for a few years. But yeah, I texted him. I was like, hey, can we get lunch sometime? Just like want to see what's up. And so we got lunch. We like sat down and this man had a plan. He's like, we're doing this.
he had been studying the TikTok.
No, it's not just, I mean, he had a whole political strategy of like, these voters are first, these voters are next. These like, I don't know who his team was that mapped out this, like the actual political strategy.
Where do the Santas fit into that?
Yeah, the Santas made it to our pitch deck.
Yeah.
Because like, then we're like, okay, so we have this meeting. He's like, I think that video should be a big part of this. And it should be in the style of Fix the MTA. Because Fix the MTA versus, say, like AOC's videos, or even what we did for Rafael Espinal, there was a lot of progressive media, political media that were like very sincere, very heartful, like, I shouldn't be doing this, but I have to do this, or like, you know, like you've all seen these ads, you know, like, and like it was novel when it first happened. Like when AOC did it, it was like mind blowing. But then when it's like 2022, 2023, people are still doing like, people like me aren't supposed to run for office. And there was like 75 people like you who all ran for office. Like it couldn't keep being this model. And I think he saw that and he's like, I don't want to do that like faux sincerity thing. Like they should be fun, they should be informative. Like this should be like a different way of doing political media. And I've told this story a few times, but try to do a quick version of it. But we're at a bus stop in the Bronx, looking for somebody to ride the bus with Zoran in like probably February 2023. And like 15 people shoot Zoran down. And he's just like, hey, excuse me, man, can I ask you some questions about the MTA? Would you mind riding the bus with me? And people were like, get the hell away from me. Most people were like, we want nothing to do with this guy. Like, what freak is talking to me? You know, we have cameras and microphones. Like, it's a weird thing. We're waiting by this bus stop, like we're just like, we just need somebody to ride the bus with us to tell us their story. And this one woman's like, sure, you can ride the bus with me. And Zoran, we ride the bus together. He interviews her for 40 minutes about her life in New York, about the decline she saw, about the affordability crisis, all the stuff that like comes up later. And she said this line in that interview that made it to the video, but also made it to his launch speech of the campaign. And I honestly think he might have closed the campaign with the same line because it was so powerful when we heard it. But this woman, she said, I used to love New York, but now it's just where I live. And it was like heartbreaking, to hear that. And so that was a shoot of the Fix the MTA campaign. And so like even then, like we had a little diversity. They weren't all fun. They weren't all SantaCon cameos and things like that. But we did some early ones. Like we did the Fordham Road video where he talks to Fordham Road and Hillside Avenue in Queens, where he, right after the election, when we're talking to Trump voters in their neighborhoods. And that was surreal too, because I mean, this is like waiting for the bus. Like nobody wants to talk to, he's out there with like the wired mic. Granted, I've never had money to do any of these projects, like ever. And so as a rule, like you're just like always as scrappy as you can be. I have this camera and my wired Rode mic plugged into a Zoom recorder that's like just sitting on the sidewalk. So in the wide shot, you could just see, like you could kick this thing, and it actually broke during that shoot. But but it was like the jankiest, most lo-fi production team. But yeah, we just went out. That was the early campaign. Like when I just think about it, like the early campaign was just me and Debbie in the backseat, Zoran the passenger, and Andrew Epstein, the communications director, just driving around the 5 boroughs, seeing what's up. I mean, there was one shoot we did that like truly felt like that, which was surprising small donors. And that was Andrew, I think it was Andrew's idea. It was like, well, why don't we see who in New York gave you $10 and why they were motivated to give you $10, or why they give you, I think it was like up to 25. And so we rode around the 5 boroughs. We had like the data of like people, like their name, I think it's like your name and your address and your donor amount. And so we were going around like literally checking the map, trying to knock on people's doors randomly and like surprise them, like, hey, it's your favorite mayoral candidate at your door. That was probably our favorite shoot and our favorite video of the campaign, because it was so organic. And yeah, I mean, in the end, like it was hybrid levels of surprising people. Some people got a call the night before. Some people got a call the day of, because like we're like, oh, my friend lives in this neighborhood. They might have their dad might have donated or something like that. And then there's the clip that opens that video was like a truly organic surprise where we just like buzzed someone's house in the Bronx. This young guy, Yuri, I think he gave $10, and we spent time with him. He told us his story. He later became a volunteer lead. And so later, when we went back to the Bronx in March, we found Yuri like as part of a 7 or 8 person like lead volunteership. Yeah, so I worked on the campaign for the primary. June was one of the craziest months of my entire life. This is like a crazy synchronicity, but I started bringing posters back from the campaign office to Bushwick, because I was like, it's Bushwick, these things should be everywhere. And so I would leave them at my house and I'd like post on Instagram, like, hey guys, if you want Zoran posters, hit me up. One of my neighbors takes them, he goes home and he's like, dude, look what I got in the mail. And it was like 5 of like, Zoran is evil, New York City's going to hell, this and that. All of those like negative mailers that they spent $32 million on. And the campaign did not know what Zoran was going to say on Subway Takes, like for the second run. I mean, it wasn't fully worked out. There were ideas. There were like draft ideas. But I remember getting those mailers the night before, and I was like, guys, I have to bring these. Like I checked my mailbox and I had them in my mailbox. I was like, I have to bring these. And so when we got together for his second appearance, which was now like a radically different time in June versus, a year before. And yeah, we just like literally just sat around and like read the mailers together. And we're just like, this would be so fun to just talk about. These are absurd. These things are crazy. And then it was just like, yeah, Kareem will just ask him if it's true. And that's what we'll do. And it was a lot of fun to just,
that was a good one.
just workshop that on the spot. And and it ended up being like perfect. Also another way to do political media too, because they're spending $32 million on negative ads. And the idea that like with the power of the internet, with social media, you could just address it. This was the craziest part. This might have been the craziest moment of the campaign, or at least one of them was, and we're all like, everybody in the room had been like a diehard Bernie person for like 10 years. And we filmed the Bernie Zohran interview. And afterwards, and the cameras were all still rolling. So there's footage of this from multiple angles. But Bernie, like, we thought his team was gonna rush him out. We thought like, okay, cut, he's gonna go, he's gonna get shuffled out. He wanted to stay and talk to us. And he gave us like this amazing 5-minute pep talk about how important social media was. Bernie loves social media. Bernie is like,
He's all day on TikTok.
this is literally the conversation. Bernie's
Someone
like,
take his phone away from him at night.
oh, Bernie's like, after we're done shooting, Bernie just goes to Zoran. He's like, hey, Zoran, so how many followers you got? He's like, how many followers? And like detailed questions about like demographics. He's like 4 million. He's like, good, yeah. How many in New York? It's like 2 million. Oh yeah, great, yeah, that's great. He's like, and then he turns to us. And he makes really strong eye contact with us, the video team, and he's like, this is your job. he's like, you have to do this. This camera. He's like, this is revolutionary. And
it will be televised.
Yeah,
and it will be televised.
But his whole, and he had this point. He was like, they could say whatever they want. They have endless resources. Traditional media has endless. They have the broadcast networks, whatever, and they control their message very strongly. But you have this new thing of digital video production combined with social media that's unprecedented in how quickly you can get a message out and just say what you think, say what you feel. So Bernie was just like, he's the messenger. Your job is to get it out. He's like, he gave us this amazing pep talk, and we're all just like stunned. Like, is this happening? This is like the man who should have been the president, and is just like giving us this advice.
So much has been written about everything from the color grading to the content. At what point did you know the campaigns were hitting a nerve? These videos were hitting a nerve?
I think that second or third video, the Trump voter video went out and was the first video that really went viral. And hey, we live in New York. I'm gonna take a wild guess about people in this room. You might have not been having the best time after November 5th, 2024. It might have been a rough week. And I think a lot of people didn't know what to do, didn't know how to respond to this moment. And I think that video, just going out and listening to these Trump voters express how they feel. I mean, the amount of people who just talked about Gaza and that they voted for Trump because they thought he was more anti-war. Just letting, like, that narrative would have never come through traditional channels. And it was like, by going out and actually listening to people and hearing them, explain why they did what they did and these are like immigrant, working class, Black and Latino neighborhoods, Bangladeshi neighborhoods. Like, these are not white supremacist deplorables. This was like and I think that video, and we heard like through channels, like Bernie's old campaign manager sharing your video in the Slack channel, So I think that video was this moment where there was another narrative, and another way to see politics, another way to explain politics that came out. And then, the subsequent videos like really just started like hitting in a weird way. I mean, in the beginning, we were just experimenting, and John McDonough and Seth Goldman, who are two retired cab drivers we met through Keep the Meter Running. John McDonough is an old radical Irish guy who has a radio show in New York for like 40 years. And my uncle Gino in the Bronx has been listening to him since the 1980s. And when he heard I was doing a taxi show, he's like, you need to call John McDonough. And so he'd been pushing me for months. And then eventually Kareem called John McDonough. He did the show. And John McDonough, on the side of driving a taxi, was like a poet, had a one-man show, has this very vibrant life. So he came on Keep the Meter Running. He brought his best friend, Seth Goldman. We were at Cat's Deli, had a bizarre conversation. Later, we do a Seth episode. John McDonough's the guest there. And then I needed 2 grumpy guys to be on a park bench in Love, New York, which now overlaps with, so like, I was like, okay, I need 2 guys that yell at each other on a park bench. Do I have some guys?
Yeah.
But then Andrew Epstein, on like our 4th or 5th video of the campaign, he's like, I want to do a video about 2 grumpy guys at the diner, just, talking politics, like yelling at each other. I was like, I got some guys. And so, yeah, John McDonough and Seth Goldman went from just being retired taxi drivers to now, and also they got plugged into New York Nico's world separately. Like John McDonough's in a Mets commercial. Seth Goldman came back to Subway Takes to do like a Nathan's hot dog sponsored take. Like they're having this moment, and they're amazing in the film. They're in Love, New York. But yeah, this whole happened like in such a short time span of even I think shooting Love, New York to shooting the Zoran video in the diner. And the whole premise of their video, literally Zoran walks over and I think John McDonough goes, "Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck is this guy?" And like that, sorry if I'm cursing. I don't know what our limits are. But yeah, like that was the premise of that video, was like, people think the mayoral race is just about Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, but there's this other guy. Yeah. And so we had that was when it was a little more fun. I like wrote a script for that. I also wrote a script for the Valentine's Day video. In the original script, there were some ideas. This was also like where we started, I think, creatively, and really to push the absurdity as much as possible. The script I wrote for the Valentine, I wrote actually a script that maybe Johnny Gaffney was going to star in. I wrote 2 scripts. It was like, one was about a couple, maybe Johnny was going to be in it, and then the other one, I literally had a scene in the script where Zoran was laying centerfold in the booth at the restaurant with a rose between his teeth, like staring directly to the camera. And I honestly think it wasn't impossible that we could have shot something like that, but I think by that time they're like, all right, let's be serious, guys. Like, let's rein it in.
Fast forward to a month ago, in November, and Zoran has won the mayoral race. You have your film in the Bowery Film Festival. Subway Takes is more popular than ever. I guess this is almost like the apex of all these different threads of your life coming together all at once. Walk us through that moment when you're, at the winning speech backstage with Zoran. What's going through your mind at that time? It finally happens.
Well, I would say that it really hit me on the primary night, because the primary night was when it seemed impossible. I think in June it seemed, there's some people feeling more confident than others. I woke up that morning, people were like, what do you think's gonna happen? I was like, I think it's 50-50. Like, I think, you're so trained to get used to terrible things happening all the time. So you're like, this can't, and I remember like that morning, the emotions that came to me after like 20 years of thinking about politics, thinking about the anti-war movement, all these chapters of my life that have been in a political life, and then of all our experience together over the last couple of years as a collective, I remember just like opening a drawer to like get a fork out of my, in my kitchen, and just breaking down crying, like all day long. Like 6 or 7 times, just all the emotions were hitting me on the hour. And I think I might have posted something about it online, because I think, if I remember correctly, like Zoran's wife was like, she was like, I'm having a similar experience. Like, it was so, I think the emotions were then, like the most intense of the emotions were the primary. Even Andrew Epstein came like on the primary night, like he walked out of a back room to the main room, and Andrew actually was working in this neighborhood before the election, he was Emily Gallagher's chief of staff. So he spent a lot of time in this neighborhood. And yeah, he walked into the room after they declared victory, and like we all just started chanting his name. He breaks down crying. Then he breaks down crying. Then somebody else breaks down crying. Like all the emotions really, it was, I'd say like the primary night was one of the most emotional, like that day and night was one of the most emotional days of my, and also it was the first time I stopped working. Like up to that point for, I think 6 weeks. And then before that I had like a corporate project. So technically and still to this day, since April, I don't think I've had like a day off. Like I'm really cracked out these days. But the morning of the primary was the first time there was no assignment left. There was no video to deliver. I think I had my last one in, and so I think that's where like there was time to feel everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think when I think the November was a lot more celebratory. It was like there were a lot more smiles. It wasn't like this heaviness. It was just like, this is insane, and we did it.
Yeah.
I mean, 100. I always say we are on a 104,000 person team. That's
a great way to put it.
Because I think the volunteer effort is what made it happen.
That's beautiful. Now that you've had the success there, and the success of the new film, what's next for you?
This film, Love New York, that we did, came out of this kind of like pact Kareem and I had of like, by the end of the year, we're going to make a movie. And Kareem did make a movie in 2022 called Or Something, which I think you should check out. I think it's now streaming some places. And I had wrote this in 2022. And I think that also was a thing. It was a culmination of like, I can't move on with my life. I can't grow up as an adult until I do this thing. Like I've said I was going to be a filmmaker. I said I was going to make a film. I have to do this thing. Since then, the production company, my production company has backed, it'll be, at the end of this year, 6 different projects.
So for the folks who are working on their first feature film, or maybe where you were in 2014, broke on their cousin's couch, looking back at your journey now, what advice would you give them starting out today?
I would say, not only is it, should you give yourself permission to lean on a community, but you should participate in a community, you should maintain a community, and you should give when you can to help support your fellow artists, because it's a sort of economy. I think we call it the favor economy. And it's like, oh yeah, can you come can you go get the coffees on my set? I'm doing this project. Can you go do this thing? Like I think so much of at least independent film runs on that. It's like, who can just literally be like a body in the room to do can you carry this lamp? Can you move that stool? Can you do this thing? Can you come be a background? Where's Sam? Sam came out to be a background in Love New York more than any other person. Every time I put out the call, Sam was there. And we had such a amazing. There's our cinematographer just staring me directly. There. Such an amazing community. Yeah, and honestly, you came out completely voluntarily. We had a crisis where we had a location that was the most expensive, most sought after location in the film. And our DP had like a once in a lifetime opportunity project that he was double booked with, and it was like, sorry, I can't do it, I have to go. 3 days out. And Aaron saved the day. I called him up and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have no DP. We got to film this movie in 3 days. Aaron's like, hang on, let me go do some location scouting. Like hops on his bike, goes up to Long Island City, starts taking pictures, and I feel like, and I was at a bachelor party in Fort Lauderdale, like managing this crisis and like trying to sending pictures back and forth. It's crazy. Like, I don't recommend it. If you could do anything else, if there's anything else you could do in your life, do it. the only reason to do this is if you can't do anything else. I think that's really good.
That's lovely, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you guys for your patience. I know it took a while to get.
Work with your friends, work with your community. Thanks so much for being a part of this community. It's been a pleasure having you and seeing you grow into this incredible filmmaker. Thanks so much, Anthony.
Yeah, and also you should know that the film, like this community supported from day one. Johnny and Alp's listed as a producer in the film, early investor. Johnny got us some locations, like logistical support. We had a like fundraiser where people are literally throwing money into a hat at Roberta's in Bushwick to like raise our first funds for it. I remember you were our first big donor that day. So like the community is here. Like this is very much a part of the community that made this thing happen. I'm so grateful for you guys.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers.